My name is Natalie Carter. I didn't fall out with my family. I was phased out. Softly, elegantly, like a design choice. No slam doors, no public fights. Just skipped names, forgotten replies, a dress code sent without warmth, an invitation without a chair. They called it tradition. I called it performance. And year after year, I played along, quietly handing over money, time, patience, thinking maybe this time they'd see me. They didn't. But this year, something changed. I didn't show up to blend in. I brought the ledger. I brought the silence they mistook for weakness. And I brought the keys to the car they said I'd never own. If you've ever been erased in plain sight, if you've ever stood at the edge of your own family's table, waiting for a place to sit, stay with me. Because sometimes you don't need to raise your voice to change the room. You just have to stand. With the truth. The email came at 7:42 a.m., subject line in all caps, holiday details, as if the emoji could soften the edge. I hadn't even sipped my coffee when I opened it and read the list of suggested attire, and the footnote at the end. Please don't park too close to the main driveway. Some guests have large cars. I reread the message twice, not sure what stung more, the passive-aggressive tone or the impersonal phrasing. Not "Hi, Natalie" or "Can't wait to see you." Just a cold block of information like a corporate memo. It made me feel like an extra in a scene that wasn't mine. I sat on the worn leather couch in my tiny office, the heater rumbling faintly, the scent of coffee lingering from the shared kitchen down the hall. The Christmas lights blinked lazily outside the frosted window, their artificial cheer blurring with the gray Chicago morning. It had been years since I was invited to a proper family Christmas. Not since Dad passed and everything shifted. Quietly, cruelly. The roles we used to play hardened into something else. I remembered carrying boxes of gifts up the front steps every December, arms red from the cold, and watching Chloe glide in after me with nothing but a silk clutch and a smile. Somehow, only her name made it into the family toast. I texted Tara. Me. Just got Chloe's invite. Includes a dress code. Tara. LOL, is it a wedding or a sacrifice? Me. TBD. I wanted to laugh, but couldn't quite get there. I clicked open the shared Google sheet I hadn't looked at in months. Personal financial support, 2016 to 2022. Line after line, it chronicled every loan I had ever given them. Thousands here, hundreds there. An emergency retainer for Chloe's apartment deposit. A co-signed credit card for Ryan, my brother, which he'd maxed out and ghosted. Flights, dresses, rent money, groceries, none of it repaid. Not even acknowledged. Tara once called me the quiet current that powers the machine. I didn't respond then, but I remember the words. I hit print. The spreadsheet spat from the old Canon in the corner of the office. I slipped the pages into a scuffed file folder I hadn't used in years, once for college applications, later for resumes, and now for this. That afternoon, I lingered in front of my apartment closet longer than I should have. I hadn't put up a tree, not a single garland or snowflake decal. The only trace of the season was the scarf I now held in my hands. Deep green, wool, frayed at the edges. Chloe had once called it rustic, her smile stiff with judgment. That year, I'd taken it off before walking through the front door, folding it quietly and tucking it into my bag. This time, I ran my fingers over its stitching. How long have I been playing the role of the bearer? Bearing gifts, burdens, silence. Bearing the discomfort of comments passed off as jokes. Bearing the role of the helpful one, the one who understands, the one who doesn't make things awkward. This year, Chloe had included that line again in the email. Let's keep the guest list simple. Don't bring anyone awkward. I stared at the words for a long time. Maybe she didn't mean anything by it. Or maybe she did. Either way, the message was clear. I looked at myself in the mirror, scarf still in hand. I felt that familiar pull. Grit my teeth, show up, play nice. Be civil. I told myself, let's go and be civil. But something in me whispered, not this year. The lights on Chloe's porch sparkled. Inside, everything sparkled, except the way they looked at me. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I stepped out of the car, a low hum of conversation slipping through the frosted glass of Chloe's oversized windows. Her house stood tall and symmetrical, freshly painted in a tasteful beige, with red bows tied on every lantern and a pre-lit garland snaking along the handrails like it belonged in a catalog. It was all perfect, which made the cold inside sharper. The door opened before I rang the bell. "Oh, Nat, you made it," Chloe said with the breathless charm of someone who already regrets extending an invitation. Her eyes skimmed over my outfit. Clean, understated, and she gave me a quick hug without really touching me. I stepped into a wave of cinnamon-scented air, holiday jazz, and voices too loud for sincerity. I recognized a few faces from social media posts. Her co-workers, friends from college, people who always smiled with their teeth but rarely with their eyes. Someone handed me a flute of Prosecco I didn't ask for. "Natalie," my mother greeted, emerging from the kitchen like a character in a stage play. "You look, well." Well was a strange choice. She wore pearls, an apron that didn't have a speck on it, and the exact same perfume she used every Christmas. "I brought wine," I said, holding it out. "Oh, that's nice." She took it like a formality, placing it beside a lineup of bottles that probably cost 3 times as much. In the dining room, the long mahogany table had name cards. I found mine at the far end, next to the coat stand, half a chair's width from the corner. The last spot. The last name written. The meal unfolded like theater. Chloe stood often, topping off glasses and directing servers. She sparkled and everyone applauded. Susan recounted childhood stories that only involved Chloe and Zach. No one asked me about the startup. No one asked me anything. When it came time for gifts, the energy spiked. Someone wheeled in a cart and everyone leaned forward. A sleek espresso machine was revealed. $800, someone gasped. Chloe clapped her hands, modestly shocked. Someone else received a weekend spa package, a smartwatch, silk scarves, framed art. Then a small rectangle wrapped in craft paper landed in my lap. I peeled it open. A notebook. On the front, gold letters read, "Stay humble." Chloe picked that, my mother said with a smile. She thought it was very you. I stared at the words, my throat tight with something I couldn't quite swallow. I texted Tara under the table. "Me? Still think it was a good idea to come?" Tara. "Tara, want me to call with a fake emergency?" I didn't reply. Later, while standing near the fireplace, I brought up Elderbright, the platform I'd built for seniors learning tech. Just to share, just to be seen. "We just hit 10,000 active users," I said, smiling softly. Susan turned her head mid-sip and said, "Chloe, tell me again how you got that invitation to Harvard's summer program?" Chloe laughed, launching into the story as if I'd never spoken. The circle shifted away like birds startled from a tree. Zach didn't look at me. He stirred his drink, jaw tight. I wondered if he remembered that $3,500 loan I gave him during his second semester at Northwestern, so he wouldn't lose housing. He never mentioned it again. Maybe that memory was mine alone now. Dessert was served. Laughter rippled around the room like warm water I couldn't touch. I sat, quiet, hearing forks scrape china while the music looped to Let It Snow. As the laughter rose around me, I realized I wasn't just being ignored. I was being erased. "You're late," Chloe said, and "we're out of chairs." Snow whispered against the windshield as I parked in the same spot I had last night, slightly farther down the drive, just enough to avoid the prime positions. The street looked different in daylight, brighter, colder, as if everything had been scrubbed clean overnight. The frost clung to the edges of the grass like it wasn't ready to let go. The front door opened before I knocked. Chloe stood there in her satin robe, perfectly curled hair, coffee in hand. She didn't say good morning, just those words, rehearsed like a line from a sitcom. "You're late," she said again, smiling without warmth. And we're out of chairs. Behind her, I could see the guests already gathered, lined along the breakfast bar on the edge of the sofa by the faux fireplace. Matching pajamas, matching mugs. Laughter that didn't quite fill the space. A curated morning made for Instagram. I didn't move, just breathed in the sharp winter air. "Remember?" Chloe added casually, brushing imaginary lint from her sleeve. "We have important guests. Timing matters." Her voice echoed the email from 2 days ago. "Be on time," it had said. "And don't crowd the driveway. Some guests have larger cars." I looked at her, then stepped aside. The key fob was in my coat pocket, smooth and cold like a river stone. I pressed the button. Behind me, a soft click sounded as the headlights of the Bentley flashed twice. The polished black finish caught the sun. The logo glinted, sharp, unmistakable. Then the doors unlocked with a low, controlled thunk. Every voice inside paused. Heads turned. A murmur spread. Someone actually gasped. I didn't say a word. Chloe blinked. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her mug dipped slightly, sloshing coffee onto her perfect nails. Zach, standing just behind her, leaned forward, squinting through the window. "I'll be fine," I said, finally. Just that. Calm, measured. Then I smiled. Not wide, not forced, just enough to let the silence stretch. I turned from the porch and walked back toward the Bentley, my boots crunching rhythmically over the salted path. I could feel eyes on my back, feel the question forming in every mouth too stunned to speak. I opened the driver's door and paused, just briefly. Zach's voice came behind me, low, almost pleading. "Is that really yours?" I didn't answer. I left the engine running. It wasn't the car that shook them. It was what I brought out next. The moment I stepped back into the house, the heat wrapped around me like static. Conversations had turned brittle, laughter dialed down to background noise. The Bentley was still visible through the front window, engine quiet now, but its presence lingered in the room like an aftershock. I walked past the gift pile, past the tray of cinnamon rolls no one had offered me, past Chloe, who stood frozen by the counter, her grip on her mug tighter than necessary. Her friends whispered in the corner, less subtle now. No one stopped me. I sat on the same bar stool I had been told was temporary seating the night before, the one near the trash bin. Then I opened my bag. The folder made a soft snap as I pulled it out and set it on the marble counter. I could see the recognition in Chloe's eyes the moment she saw the edges of the printed spreadsheet. Pastel-colored rows, bold totals, highlighted debt. "What's that?" she asked. I looked at her, then at my mother, sitting stiffly on the cream couch, one hand smoothing the throw pillow as if it could smooth the air. I unfolded the printout and placed it flat on the surface. 5 years, I said evenly, line by line. Chloe blinked. "You're seriously doing this? Right now?" I didn't answer. I pointed to the first row. $2,000 for Zach's tuition. Transferred January 2019. You said you'd pay me back by spring. Zach straightened. I thought I did." "You didn't," I said without turning. Next row. $5,000 for the launch of Chloe's studio. February 2020. You texted me. Only for 6 months. Promise. Chloe stepped closer. "Why did you bring that?" I met her eyes. "Because the last time I walked into this house, I didn't have a wallet address on paper." She opened her mouth, closed it. Susan stood up. "Natalie," my mother said in that tone reserved for scolding and Sunday prayers, "isn't this supposed to be a happy occasion? You're making everyone uncomfortable." I turned to her, slowly. "I used to think so," I said. until I was made a piece of shit. Silence slammed into the room like a dropped tray. No one moved. My eyes didn't waver. I didn't raise my voice. But I felt every syllable land like a crack in glass. I was the one who sent money when Zach's car broke down, I continued. I was the one who signed a loan so Mom wouldn't lose the condo she now says was always hers. And when Chloe wanted a new espresso machine, I transferred the money without blinking. Stop, Chloe muttered. I ignored her. I tapped the last line. Total, $23,147. No interest. No follow-up. Just trust. Zach's voice came quietly, shakily. Wait, is that true? I looked up. He wasn't looking at Chloe. He wasn't looking at Mom. He was looking at me. The front door opened and Tara walked in, heels clicking louder than the silence. Every head turned as her boots met the hardwood, each step deliberate. She wore a tailored coat in deep forest green, snow still melting in specks along the hem, and her eyes swept the room like she already knew what had happened before walking in. Are they treating our CEO right? She said, with a smile sharp enough to slice through the tension. Dead quiet. My mother blinked once, then again, like she was trying to place Tara's face in some forgotten Christmas card list. Chloe's glass clinked softly as her fingers shifted. She was the first to speak, voice catching mid-word. Key CEO? Tara tilted her head, brows rising. Wait. Her eyes danced as she looked around. They didn't know? You're kidding. I didn't speak. I just stood there. This time, not at the corner of the room, not against a wall. Just standing, present, accounted for, the center of a storm I no longer feared. Zach leaned forward, his voice small. CEO? Of what? I met his eyes. Aurora Works, I said quietly. The platform you used when your router failed in October? That remote tech support app? I built that. Someone exhaled. Someone else dropped their fork. Tara let out a small laugh, warm but edged. She's being modest, she added. Co-founder, lead architect, and operations lead for 3 years. We bootstrapped it from a rented space above a laundromat. Last week? She reached into her tote bag and pulled out her iPad. Last week, this came in. She tapped twice. The screen lit up with an open email, the Amazon logo unmistakable in the header. She angled it toward the room. Initial offer, she said. Just under $18 million. I watched Chloe blink. Once, twice, too fast. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no sound followed. Her hand found the edge of the counter, gripping it like the world had started tilting. Susan sat down slowly, her knees folding as though her body had given up before her face could catch up. She didn't speak. Her hands folded in her lap, pale and motionless. A few guests reached for their phones. Not loudly, not rudely, just instinctively. One man whispered something to the woman next to him. She nodded, eyes still fixed on me. Tara glanced around, then leaned closer and whispered with a smirk. So, do we stay for pie? I exhaled, then turned toward Chloe. She was frozen, red in the cheeks, mouth ajar, mascara ever so slightly smudged beneath one eye. And I smiled, just slightly. And you said there's no more chair for me to sit in? They offered me a chair. I smiled and walked past it. The house felt different in the late morning light. Not quieter, just drained. The kind of hush that follows something no one can undo. The scent of cinnamon and pine still hung in the air, but it no longer masked the unease. Guests were beginning to leave, murmuring goodbyes in voices too polite to be sincere. Wrapping scarves, avoiding eye contact. Chloe's perfect Christmas had cracked. Not shattered, but visibly fractured, and everyone had seen it. I stood by the window, watching a flake of snow melt slowly down the glass. Behind me, Chloe cleared her throat. Do you want to sit down? Her voice was soft, uncertain. The chair, one of the high-backed dining ones, had been pulled slightly from the table, waiting. An offering or maybe a bandage. I didn't touch it. "No," I said simply. "I just came to return what you left in my name." I placed the spreadsheet on the countertop. It was the same file they'd seen earlier, but this time something had changed. Each line had a word beside it, neatly printed in black ink. Forgiven. Every cent. Every IOU. Every memory twisted into silence. Zach approached me slowly. He didn't speak right away. Then, voice low, "I owe you a thank you, and an apology." I nodded. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. The space between us was still full, but it wasn't hostile anymore. Just real. Susan sat nearby, hands folded in her lap. Her eyes were glossy, fixed on the floor. She hadn't said a word since Tara's arrival. I didn't expect her to now. But I saw the way her throat moved when she swallowed, the way her shoulders tensed. Tara stood beside me, coat already on, her phone silent in her hand. We turned together, walked to the door. But before I stepped through it, I stopped. One hand on the knob. The air behind me held its breath. I looked back once. "Next year," I said evenly, "don't send an invitation unless it comes with a chair and some respect." Then I walked out. The Bentley's door closed with a soft click. Behind me, I left silence and truth they could no longer ignore. I used to believe that if I was kind enough, patient enough, I would eventually be accepted. I gave everything. Money, time, even holidays I should have spent being loved, only to receive distant glances, meaningless gifts, and a chair that never existed. Every year, I walked into that house hoping not to be left behind. But they always made sure I sat at the far end of the table, if there was even a seat for me. They spoke kindly, but their eyes were cold, as if I should have known my place. The older sister who wasn't good enough, bright enough, or even worth mentioning in a toast. I stayed silent for too long, because I was afraid that if I spoke up, I would lose the only thing I had left, a faint, invisible place in a family that never really saw me. But what's the price of silence? It's being buried under denial. It's watching others be celebrated for achievements you helped make possible. So this year, I came back. But I brought everything they had forgotten. A spreadsheet of unpaid debts, a car key that spoke louder than any explanation, and a friend who refused to be quiet for the sake of civility. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't slam the table. I didn't accuse anyone. I just stood there, with the truth, and let it do what it was always meant to do. I saw the disbelief in their eyes. I saw Zach, for the first time unsure of what our mother had always said. I saw Chloe, always shining like a stage light, flicker and step back. And what surprised me most was that I didn't feel the satisfaction I once imagined. I didn't feel triumphant watching them fall silent. I didn't feel victorious when they looked lost. What I felt was a deep relief, like I no longer had to live for their approval. I walked out of that house not needing their validation, not needing their apology. I left behind a copy of the spreadsheet, this time with a single word added to each line: forgiven. Because forgiveness wasn't a gift for them. It was the way I took their power away. I didn't need the chair, and I certainly didn't need the next invitation. I already had what I needed: identity, truth, and the freedom to choose a different path. There are battles won not through rage, but by refusing to kneel. She didn't shout. She simply stood with the truth in her hands, and that was enough to tilt the room. When injustice is met with quiet courage, even the deepest betrayal cannot hold its ground. Because no wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If you're still here, thank you. Not just for watching, but for staying through every quiet moment that others would have scrolled past. For bearing witness to the weight of being the forgotten one. The extra. The emergency contact, but never the honored guest. Natalie's story isn't unique because of the spreadsheet, or the Bentley, or the reveal that silenced the room. It's powerful because of what it cost her to stay quiet for so long, and what it meant when she finally chose not to. We talk a lot about breaking the silence, but sometimes silence is the most deliberate act of courage. When you place your truth on the table, not to demand attention, but to reclaim your place, your worth, your voice. This isn't about revenge. This is about return. Not to beg for a seat, but to remind the room why it was built in the first place. So if this story spoke to something in you, if you've ever been the one standing in the hallway while others toasted, if you've ever loaned without credit, helped without thanks, loved without acknowledgement, know this: you are not alone, and your worth is not measured by how comfortable you make others feel. If you resonated with Natalie's quiet strength, drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. Share this story with someone who needs to know that being uninvited doesn't mean being unseen. Subscribe to the channel for more stories where silence becomes power and dignity doesn't require a spotlight. Here, we don't just tell stories. We reclaim them. We name the unspoken. We honor the overlooked. And we remember the ones they tried to forget. To every Natalie who never raised her voice but still stood tall, we see you, and we thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for walking with us through the quiet, through the cold, through the long driveway back to yourself. Until next time, bring your receipts, bring your truth, and never apologize for taking up space at a table you helped build. My name is Nina Carter. I'm 33, and for the last 5 years, I built the backbone of a brand my family now pretends I never touched. I helped raise a woman who now calls herself a CEO. I poured time, money, and every ounce of belief into a family that said, "We're proud of you," until I stopped being convenient. Last week, I said one word: no. And that's all it took for my mother to hurl a pot of soup at me in our kitchen. Because I refused to give my car to Kayla. Because I refused to disappear one more time. They thought I'd walk out quietly. They didn't know I'd walk into a law office 3 days later, with proof, a flash drive, and my father's ledger. What they didn't realize was, I may have been written out of their story, but I never stopped writing my own. If you've ever been erased, overlooked, or told you were too emotional for standing up for what's yours, this story is for you. Drop your city in the comments if you've ever had to fight for your name. Hit like and subscribe. Because sometimes justice isn't loud, it's prepared. And when it knocks, it brings receipts. The steam from the pot curled between us like smoke from a house already burning. I could still smell the thyme, my favorite herb, the one I used every time I cooked here. And something about it made the sting sharper. It was like this kitchen, this room where I'd sliced fruit for Kayla when she was too nervous to eat before interviews, had turned against me too. Margaret stood across from me, her chest heaving. "You think this is funny? You think you're better than her?" "No," I said calmly, pressing my napkin to the side of my sweater. "I just don't think she needs my car to become a CEO overnight." Kayla sat at the island, one hand curled around a stemmed glass. She didn't even flinch, didn't blink, just swirled her Chardonnay and tilted it toward her lips like this was dinner theater, and I was the show. I had driven that woman to so many appointments, lent her my debit card when she said rent was late, even helped rewrite her resume so it didn't read like a horoscope. And now I was the villain for saying no. Margaret's hands were shaking, whether from anger or age, I couldn't tell anymore. "You've always been selfish. Always. You hated having to share the spotlight when your father and I married." "That was 15 years ago," I said, already stepping toward the hallway. "And I didn't hate the spotlight. I hated having to pretend I wasn't being replaced. That was when it happened. The scream, the lunge, the heavy-bottomed pot sailing off the stove, broth sloshing in slow motion as it arced through the air and splattered against the pantry door just inches from my head. The thunk of metal, the slap of liquid, the hiss of heat meeting paint. I didn't move. Just stood there, soup cooling on the walls behind me. Margaret's eyes widened as if realizing the line she'd crossed, but she didn't apologize. "Then don't come back," she said, voice breaking with the kind of rage that masquerades as grief. "This is Kayla's house now." I nodded once. Noted. There were no more words after that. I walked past the hallway mirror, past the family portraits where I'd been slowly edged out over the years. Kayla's graduation, Kayla's beach trip, Kayla's birthday in Maui. All funded by the same woman who now sat silently as I was erased in real time. My bedroom upstairs still smelled like lavender and old ambition. I zipped a duffel halfway shut. Laptop, hoodie, passport, backup charger. No photos, no journals. I'd already learned the hard way not to carry memories that could be weaponized later. Downstairs, the silence was full. Not awkward. Intentional. Kayla didn't rise. Margaret didn't follow. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream.